She was the heart of the congregation, until her heart stopped beating in the very place she worshipped. In a town built on faith and silence, no one thought to question what really happened in that church basement, until the blood began to speak louder than prayer. It was supposed to be a potluck dinner. There were casseroles, hymn sheets, and a bouquet of roses on the altar. But by the end of the night, one woman would be found dead in the basement, and the killer would sit among the mourners, holding a hymn book. Elmhurst, Ohio wasn't the kind of town where people locked their doors, not because there wasn't crime, but because everyone figured they knew who would commit it. A forgotten relic of America's manufacturing past, the town was shrinking, its downtown filled with shuttered shops and hollow-eyed steelworkers nursing broken pensions. But one building still stood proud, First Hope Baptist Church, its aging steeple clawing into gray skies, defiant as ever. Every Wednesday night, First Hope held its weekly fellowship gathering in the basement. Simple meals, choir practice, community prayers. It wasn't flashy, but it was faithful. And no one embodied that more than Sarah Whitlock. At 34, Sarah was the town's golden daughter. She sang lead in the church choir, taught Sunday school, ran the winter coat drive, and still found time to bring lasagna to the elderly. Widowed young, she'd thrown herself into her faith with the kind of fervor that made people feel safe just being around her. She had a light, folks would say. Now that light was gone. On the night of October 11th, the Wednesday fellowship dinner had wrapped up just after 8:30 p.m. Sarah had stayed behind to help clean up. Nothing unusual. She always did. That's when something unusual happened. The next morning, Deacon Ray Thorne arrived early to open the doors for Thursday prayer group. He noticed the side door to the basement slightly ajar. At first, he assumed Sarah must have forgotten to lock it. But when he stepped inside, the silence felt wrong. The faint smell of coppery dampness reached him before the sight did. There, behind the storage shelf stacked with folding chairs, lay Sarah, her blouse soaked in blood, her body twisted unnaturally on the concrete floor. A hymnal was clutched in one hand. In the other, a crushed white rose. The police arrived within the hour, and the media by noon. Detective Callie Voss, a hardened but sharp local investigator, was assigned the case. She hadn't seen a murder in Elmhurst in over 4 years, and never in a church. It was personal, symbolic, and worst of all, intentional. Whoever did this, she whispered to the coroner as Sarah's body was carried out on a stretcher, knew this place, and knew her. It didn't take long for rumors to spread. Elmhurst was a place where nothing stayed buried for long, except perhaps resentment. The working theory? Someone from the congregation had turned on Sarah. But why? Sarah's fingerprints were on every aspect of the church. Yet underneath her glowing reputation, quiet murmurs started surfacing. She had been planning to run for church board director, replacing a long-serving male elder. She'd reportedly had a falling out with Janice Harmon, the pastor's wife, over youth ministry roles. And there were whispers, only whispers, of a secret romantic relationship with someone in the choir. Someone married. The community spiraled into a frenzy of speculation. Church attendance doubled, not out of faith but out of fear and voyeurism. The Sunday after Sarah's death, Pastor Caldwell preached about evil walking among us. His voice cracking, his knuckles white around the pulpit. But in the pews sat someone who didn't flinch. Someone who sang the final hymn with more passion than anyone else. Someone who had blood under their nails. In a church where every sermon promised salvation, Sarah Whitlock's murder revealed something far more human: rage, secrets, and betrayal. As investigators dig deeper, they find the congregation's prayers are masking more than sin, they're hiding motive. She smiled at everyone, hugged their children, prayed for their jobs, sang at their weddings. But when the detectives opened her phone, they found texts, secrets, and names that would blow the church's image to pieces. Someone in those pews had enough to kill for. Detective Callie Voss stood in the center aisle of First Hope Baptist Church that Friday morning, letting her eyes scan every pew, every crucifix, every crack in the walls. There was something unsettling about the silence that filled the place now, like a hush had descended not out of reverence but guilt. She had a notepad in one hand and Sarah Whitlock's phone in the other. The autopsy confirmed what she already suspected: blunt force trauma to the back of the head with a flat object, possibly a metal cross stand. No defensive wounds. She was caught off guard. Struck once. Dead instantly. No signs of sexual assault. No robbery. No forced entry. This wasn't a random attack. It was personal. The phone had been found under a folding chair near the storage closet. Screen cracked, battery half drained. It had a passcode, but the tech team cracked it within minutes. What they found inside peeled back the first layer of the mask Sarah wore. Beneath the saintly image was a woman juggling secrets like a seasoned acrobat. First, the text thread with Thomas Langley, a married deacon with 2 daughters and a wife on the church board. The messages weren't explicit, but they had the unmistakable tone of an emotional affair. There were phrases like, "I wish it could be different," and "You're the only one who sees me." The most recent message, timestamped just 2 days before her death, read, "I can't keep pretending. I'll say something after dinner. I have to." Thomas Langley was the first name Callie wrote in capital letters in her suspect list. But he wasn't alone. There was a deleted voicemail from Janice Harmon, the pastor's wife. It had been recovered from the cloud. "You think everyone adores you, don't you? This church isn't yours. Stay in your place, Sarah." Janice, according to several congregation members, had always had a complicated relationship with Sarah. Friendly in public but guarded. Sarah's growing influence, especially among the youth and women's ministry, had started to eclipse Janice's role as the pastor's spiritual partner. Even worse, it was rumored that Sarah had been quietly gathering support to become the first woman elected as church board director, replacing Eli Crane, an 82-year-old patriarch who had held the role for nearly 40 years. The role was symbolic more than functional, but in Elmhurst, symbolism was power. "She was making enemies," said Reverend Caldwell when Callie interviewed him that afternoon. He looked tired, eyes sunken behind his glasses. Not because she did anything wrong, but because she had the gall to want something more. Callie nodded slowly. "Did you know about the situation with Thomas Langley?" The Reverend stiffened. "I had my suspicions. But I don't trade in gossip, detective. I trade in grace." "But grace doesn't stop a murder, Reverend," Callie said bluntly. "People do." He sighed deeply, rubbing his temples. "This church isn't what it used to be. People used to come for faith. Now it's about politics, positions, control." Sarah threatened the balance. And just like that, the suspect list grew longer. That night, Callie sat in her car outside the Langley home, an aging ranch-style house with plastic lawn angels and wind chimes that jingled in the cold Ohio wind. She watched Thomas Langley step out in his robe to collect the newspaper. His face was pale. He looked smaller than she remembered him from the church photos. Guilt had a way of shrinking people. She knocked. He hesitated before answering. Inside, his wife, Melinda Langley, offered coffee through gritted teeth. She knew why the detective was there. Knew about the messages. Thomas didn't deny the relationship. "We were close. Too close, maybe. But I didn't hurt her. I swear to God." "Don't swear to God," Callie said. "Swear to me." He leaned forward. "I loved her. But I was never going to leave Melinda. Sarah, she was tired of being second. She said if I didn't tell the truth, she would." "When?" "The night of the dinner." So Sarah was planning to expose the affair to the entire congregation. That would have detonated reputations, marriages, and maybe the future of the church itself. Motive? Absolutely. But did Thomas have an opportunity? Melinda spoke up. "He was home with me by 9. We watched the news. Fell asleep on the couch. Asked the girls." An alibi, however shaky. Callie still wasn't satisfied. By Sunday morning, the church filled again. People weeping at the altar, hugging in tight circles, whispering behind hymnals. The choir sang Blessed Assurance, but the notes felt hollow. And then Janice Harmon stood at the pulpit, not the pastor, not the board. Janice. Her eyes were red, but her voice was clear. Sarah was complicated, but she was loved. She'll be remembered as a light. Callie sat in the back row, studying Janice's every movement. Her tone was sincere, but rehearsed. Later that day, when Callie confronted Janice about the voicemail, Janice didn't deny it. "She was undermining me," Janice said. "Everyone thinks I'm some villain." But she was dangerous, manipulative. "Enough to kill her?" Janice stared at her. "You think I'd slaughter a woman in my own church basement and come to service like nothing happened?" Callie paused. "I think someone did. Whether it was you, or someone you were protecting." By Monday, a breakthrough arrived. The tech team recovered a hidden folder on Sarah's phone, a set of audio recordings. Apparently, she had been secretly documenting conversations she felt might protect her in case something happened. A personal insurance policy. One of the recordings caught a heated argument. Sarah and Pastor Caldwell. "You can't hide behind God," Sarah said. "You're playing with fire, Sarah," he warned. "If you expose what I told you, you'll burn everything down, including yourself. What you confessed, people deserve to know. You're a hypocrite and I won't stay silent." Click. End of audio. Callie's blood ran cold. What had Sarah known? What had the pastor confessed? And then came the final text Sarah had ever sent, undelivered. I know what you did. Meet me after dinner. In the basement. A sacred vow, a hidden past, and a single text message. Sarah Whitlock was about to expose a truth the town's pastor thought he buried forever. But in the church basement, someone made sure her voice was silenced. She thought confronting him would bring closure. Instead, it ended her life. But what she didn't know was that someone else was listening. And now, after weeks of silence, they're ready to talk. Detective Callie Voss played the audio recording for the third time that morning, each word echoing louder than the last. You can't hide behind God. You're playing with fire, Sarah. If you expose what I told you, you'll burn everything down, including yourself. The argument was raw, urgent. Sarah Whitlock had something powerful, something that scared Pastor Nathan Caldwell, the town's most revered figure. He wasn't just the church's spiritual leader. He was Elmhurst's unofficial mayor. The man you went to for a blessing before proposing or for comfort after a funeral. But now, Callie saw him for what he might really be. A man with secrets, power to protect, and possibly blood on his hands. She stared out her office window as the snow fell over Elmhurst. Everything looked pure and undisturbed. But inside that church, inside that town, something deeply rotten was decaying beneath the surface. And Sarah had sniffed it out. At the precinct, Callie sat across from Reverend Caldwell in interview room B. He wore his black clergy shirt, white collar stiff against his throat. His hands were folded. Controlled. She pushed the recorder across the table. I have a recording of your last argument with Sarah. He didn't flinch. I'm not proud of it, he said. She caught me at a weak moment. She said you confessed something. What was it? I was counseling a young couple. Infidelity, a pregnancy scare. I broke confidentiality once. I told someone what had happened. Sarah found out. She was furious. Callie squinted. That's your big secret? You breached confidentiality? He looked up. To her, it meant I wasn't who I claimed to be. But I swear on the Bible, detective, I didn't kill her. Where were you the night of the murder? Home. With Janice. We watched the church live stream replays on YouTube. Callie took a breath. She texted you the night she died, told you to meet her in the basement. Did you go? A long pause. He looked away. I saw the message late. I never replied. Janice and I were arguing that night. I turned my phone off. Callie's gut clenched. The alibi was flimsy, convenient, and every answer felt rehearsed. But then, a break in the case came from the most unexpected place. 12-year-old Emily Ramos. She was the daughter of Maria Ramos, the church janitor. Quiet, observant, always with her earbuds in. Most people forgot she was even there during evening church events. She often did homework in the Sunday school room while her mom cleaned after choir practice. Emily walked into the station 2 days later with her mother in tears. I heard something the night Miss Sarah died, Emily whispered. She told Callie she was in the building late that Thursday, hidden away in the children's room on the second floor, finishing an essay on climate change. Around 9:45 p.m., she went to throw something away when she heard shouting from the stairwell leading to the basement. I thought it was just adults being loud. But then I heard Sarah's voice, she said. She sounded scared. She said, I can't believe you'd lie to my face. Then I heard a man, he was angry. What did he say? Callie asked gently. Emily hesitated. I don't remember all of it, but he said something like, you'll ruin everything. You'll destroy this church. Then a bang. A really loud bang. Then nothing. Did you see anyone? I ran back upstairs. I was scared. I didn't come out until my mom found me at midnight. Callie's heart pounded. The timeline was clear now. Sarah had met someone in that basement, and she never came back up. The crime scene unit returned to First Hope Baptist. This time they took samples from the lower walls, beneath the water heater, and around the HVAC unit. Behind a stack of hymnals in the storage room, they found it. A small smear of blood missed during the initial sweep. DNA confirmed the blood belonged to Sarah Whitlock. But it was the second DNA profile, mixed with hers, that turned the case upside down. It wasn't the pastor. Not the deacon. Not Janice. It belonged to Eli Crane, the 82-year-old board director. A man so revered in the church, his portrait hung in the lobby. A man no one would have suspected. Callie visited Eli's home the next day. He sat on his porch, wrapped in a wool blanket, a mug of black coffee shaking in his hand. You're here about Sarah? he said before she could even speak. I am. His voice was raspy. She found out about the money. What money? The fund? For missionaries. I'd been siphoning it, little by little, for years. Callie leaned forward. She confronted you? He nodded. She said she was going to expose me. Said she'd bring the whole board down. And you followed her to the basement? Tears welled in his eyes. She begged me to do the right thing. Said grace wasn't the same as justice. And I snapped. He looked at her, defeated. I didn't mean to. But once she hit the floor, I knew there was no going back. The town was in disbelief. When Callie announced the arrest, the congregation wept, not for Eli Crane, but for the illusion they'd clung to for decades. The perfect church, the flawless faith, the harmless old man. Eli was charged with second-degree murder, embezzlement, and obstruction. He confessed in full. The murder weapon, a brass candlestick holder, was found in his garage, blood-stained and wrapped in cloth. The case was closed. But Callie knew better. Because beneath every church bell and polished hymn, there are secrets. Some die in whispers. Others bleed out in the basement. They gathered to say goodbye. But instead of a eulogy, they heard a confession. And as one man opened his mouth, the whole town realized Sarah's murder wasn't just a tragedy, it was a warning. Just as they began to bury her memory, someone stood up and shattered everything they thought they knew. Because Sarah Whitlock had secrets even the police didn't uncover. And someone in the congregation was ready to reveal them. Elmhurst First Hope Baptist was a cathedral of grief that day. Gray ribbons curled around the wrought iron gates. White lilies blanketed the altar, their perfume barely masking the thick tension in the air. Sarah Whitlock's casket, smooth walnut, sealed shut, rested beneath a stained glass window of Christ on the cross. It should have been a farewell. Instead, it felt like a warning shot. The pews were full. Every elder, deacon, and congregant who had ever known Sarah had come. Not just for closure, but because they were starving for answers. Detective Callie Voss sat in the back row, dressed in plain black. She wasn't here to mourn, she was here to listen. And she didn't have to wait long. As the soft hum of the choir faded, Pastor Nathan Caldwell approached the pulpit. His voice cracked. Sarah was light in our halls. A heart for people. For justice. And sometimes justice makes enemies. A beat of silence passed. A few sniffles. One audible scoff. Then, just as Caldwell prepared to close the Bible in front of him, someone stood up. A man. Late 30s. Tall, lean, hair tied back in a tight knot. Dressed in charcoal slacks and a brown suede jacket. Callie leaned forward. The man climbed the steps to the pulpit like he had done it before. But no one seemed to know him. May I speak? He asked. His voice was quiet but steady. Pastor Caldwell hesitated, then stepped back. My name is Isaiah Flint, the man said, placing a folded paper on the podium. I met Sarah Whitlock 3 years ago. Not in this church, but in a support group. One for survivors of spiritual abuse. Gasps scattered through the congregation. Callie's eyes narrowed. She didn't talk much at first, but when she finally did, she talked about this town. This church. She said something was rotten here. And she was going to dig it out. He looked across the crowd. She told me she was investigating misused funds, yes, but that was just the surface. Sarah believed someone in this very congregation had abused his spiritual authority for decades. That people were silenced, paid off, or shamed into silence. People began shifting uncomfortably. A woman in the third row lowered her head. A man near the back stood abruptly and walked out. Isaiah continued. She said it started years ago, before she even came back to town. She'd found a pattern in the church archives. Youth volunteers being reassigned. Quiet departures. Families leaving with no explanations. And when she confronted one of the board members, Eli Crane, he panicked. Now the room was ice. She knew too much, Isaiah said. And that's why she died. After the funeral, Callie found Isaiah near the parking lot. You're not just a friend, she said. You're something more. He nodded slowly. We dated. Briefly. She ended it when things got serious between her and Derek. But we stayed close. We shared something most people don't understand. Spiritual trauma, Callie guessed. Isaiah's eyes softened. It doesn't leave bruises, but it controls you. And when someone like Sarah starts pulling the thread, it threatens the entire tapestry. Callie pulled out her notebook. She told you about Eli? She told me about 4 people, he replied. Eli was the one she had evidence on, but there were 3 others. He handed her a list, and there it was. 3 names: Eli Crane, Reverend Tom Bowers, Deacon Ray McClure. Callie's pen hovered. What did she say about them? Bowers ran the youth ministry in the early 2000s. Sarah said she found out he'd been quietly dismissed after multiple parents raised complaints about overstepping boundaries. No charges filed. Nothing public. He now preaches in Ohio. And McClure? She didn't have specifics. Just that he was the one who approved every internal resolution for staff conflicts. Anything swept under the rug, he signed off on it. Callie took a slow breath. If she had gone public, she wouldn't have just exposed embezzlement. She would have destroyed the church's legacy. Isaiah looked away. And that legacy was worth killing for. That night, Callie reopened every closed personnel file from the church's internal archives. Finally granted access through a court order. One file caught her eye. 1998. Youth volunteer. Male. Age 16. Complaint, boundary violation. Internal note, handled in prayer and private mediation. No police report. No parental signature. Just initials. I'm Ray McClure. And there were more. Not many, but enough to show a pattern. Always the same format. Always closed internally. It confirmed what Sarah had feared, and what Isaiah had warned her would happen if she kept digging. Now Callie knew, this wasn't just a murder investigation. It was an excavation. At the next church board meeting, Callie arrived unannounced. She dropped the files on the table. These weren't resolved, she said. They were buried. Ray McClure paled. That's church business. You have no jurisdiction. Callie cut him off. I do when there's a murder. And I do when multiple victims say you silenced them. He didn't speak again. Not that day. By the end of the week, the church was under full internal audit. The local paper ran the headline, Grace or Cover Up. The crisis inside Elmhurst First Hope Baptist. Ray McClure resigned. Reverend Bowers, tracked down in Ohio, was suspended. But justice for Sarah was still bittersweet. Her name cleared. Her work validated. Yet her voice, gone forever. Or so Callie thought. Because then, something unexpected arrived in her inbox. An email. From Sarah. Scheduled weeks before her death. Subject line, if I go silent, open this. What if the victim left you one last message? A trail of digital breadcrumbs that pointed directly to her killer. For Detective Callie Voss, Sarah Whitlock's final email didn't just answer questions. It ignited a war. It arrived after her death. Scheduled. Precise. A digital whisper from the grave, and it didn't just name names. It exposed a lie so deeply woven into the town's fabric that pulling the thread could unravel everything. Detective Callie Voss stared at her screen. The subject line sent a chill down her spine. If I go silent, open this. The sender, Sarah Whitlock. Date scheduled, 3 days before her death. Time received, exactly 2:02 a.m. It wasn't just eerie. It was deliberate. She clicked it open. Callie, if you're reading this, it means something has gone wrong. Or maybe I'm just paranoid. Either way, I need someone to finish what I started. I've attached a folder labeled Whistle. It includes PDFs, screenshots, voice notes, and a hidden file you'll need a password to open. The password is Eli was first. I was wrong about the money laundering being the biggest secret. It's deeper than that. It always was. You'll find one name in that hidden file, the one I didn't want to believe. But I can't ignore it anymore. He was the reason I came back. And maybe the reason I won't make it out. Protect the girls. And don't trust the pulpit. Sarah. The room felt like it was closing in around Callie. Don't trust the pulpit. She opened the folder. The files were organized by year, 1995 to 2024. Hundreds of documents. Handwritten notes, typed memos, school records, scanned letters. It was overwhelming, until she found the encrypted file. She typed the password Eli was first. It opened. Inside was a single Word doc titled, The Real Shepherd. Callie clicked. It was a personal account. Sarah's. Written like a diary entry. He was the first person to mentor me when I joined the church's youth leadership team. Said I had a gift for teaching. I was 16. He was 34. I thought he was God's vessel. Turned out he was a predator in a suit. He never touched me, not physically. But he made me dependent. Emotionally, spiritually. He turned every question into sin. Every doubt into betrayal. He told me leaving the church meant leaving salvation. I believed him until I left for college and realized the world was so much bigger than Elmhurst First. When I came back, I thought I was stronger. But seeing him again, it was like I was 16 all over again. Pastor Nathan Caldwell is not who he says he is. Callie sat in silence. Pastor Nathan Caldwell. The man who cried over Sarah's casket. The man who let Isaiah Flint speak at the funeral. The man who had conveniently never shown up on Sarah's suspect list, until now. She replayed his eulogy in her mind. The way he choked up when he mentioned justice. The way he stared at the front row like he was holding back a storm. It was all theater. And Sarah had known. The next morning, Callie paid a visit to Isaiah Flint. "You ever hear Sarah mention Nathan Caldwell in a negative light?" she asked. Isaiah's brow furrowed. She respected him, or at least acted like she did. Why? She left a digital file. Named him directly. Said he manipulated her as a teenager, spiritually. Isaiah took a step back, shaken. That would make sense. Explain. There was a time she shut down completely. A week before she left town for good the first time. She told me someone made her believe questioning authority was blasphemy. That her calling was obedience. And she never said who? Isaiah shook his head. Only that he was powerful. Revered. Callie needed proof. Not just Sarah's word. So she went back into the folder. There, tucked in the 2007 section, was an email thread between Sarah and her childhood best friend, Danielle Reese, now living in Pittsburgh. The subject, "I think he's still watching me." Danielle had written back, "You mean Pastor Nate? What did he do now?" Attached was an audio file titled, Voice Note June 12.mp3. Callie played it. "He found me in the choir room. Asked if I still felt called to serve. Then said I had a spirit of rebellion, the kind that needed gentle correction. He said I was making people uncomfortable. I told him I was leaving and he smiled, like he already knew. Then he said, 'The church doesn't forget its own, Sarah, even when they try to forget it.'" The pieces fit now. Sarah had been emotionally groomed, then blacklisted. Her return? It wasn't just investigative. It was personal. Caldwell knew her triggers. Knew how to discredit her if she ever spoke out. And now she was dead. Callie walked into First Hope's rectory the next evening, during the weekly worship committee meeting. She waited until everyone was seated, then placed Sarah's printed journal on the table. Pastor Caldwell paled as he read the opening lines. "I was 16. He was 34. Callie's voice was ice. She trusted you. And when she came back, she tried to protect others." Nathan Caldwell stood, hands trembling. That's not." "You didn't have to lay a finger on her," Callie said. "You had her mind." Board members looked stunned. Whispers rose. But Caldwell just sat down, like a man who'd been waiting for this moment. 2 days later, Pastor Nathan Caldwell resigned. No public admission. No criminal charges, yet. But Callie had already contacted a local advocacy group. Several young women had come forward after hearing about Sarah's death. The DA reopened a sealed 2006 investigation. And Isaiah Flint made sure Sarah's files were archived and protected, under her name. In death, Sarah Whitlock exposed the soul rot of an institution. She wasn't paranoid. She was right. And her voice, quiet, digital, prophetic, still echoed long after the last hymn faded. The church was supposed to be her sanctuary. But when Sarah's truth shook its very foundation, the question became, was her murder a tragic consequence of secrets, or a deliberate silencing by the very institution she once trusted? The killer was never far from the choir, never absent from the pews. Sarah Whitlock's murder wasn't just an act of violence. It was a message, and the person who sent it had no intention of being caught. Until the town began to speak. The vigil outside First Hope Chapel looked like redemption, but it felt like guilt. Hundreds had gathered, some with candles, others with signs, "Justice for Sarah." But what haunted Detective Callie Voss wasn't the silence. It was the whispers, finally loud enough to hear. Young women, middle-aged parishioners, former staff. They came forward, one by one. And their stories shared a common thread, Pastor Nathan Caldwell. He was never physically violent. But the emotional manipulation, the gaslighting cloaked in scripture, the forced silence, it was all there. Like Sarah's story replicated across generations. Still no one had named a killer. And the clock was ticking. 2 weeks after Caldwell's resignation, he vanished. No forwarding address. No activity on his credit cards. His home, empty. His phone, disconnected. It was as if the town's most powerful man had evaporated into smoke. And then something broke the silence. A phone call. Private number. 2:15 a.m. Detective Voss? Yes. I know who killed Sarah, and I have proof, but I want immunity. The voice was male, young, nervous. Callie gripped the receiver. Name? Pause. His name's Eli Thorne, Sarah's ex, but it's not what you think. Caldwell. Caldwell made it happen. Eli Thorne, the worship pastor, the golden boy, the man Sarah had dated in high school and had briefly reconnected with upon her return. He had an alibi. He led the music at the exact time Sarah's phone stopped pinging, corroborated by multiple church members. But now, a caller was placing him at the scene as a pawn or perpetrator. Callie had to move fast. She traced the call to Jonas Creel, an IT volunteer and former church member, currently in rehab for opioid dependency. Jonas claimed he had helped Caldwell erase files, security footage, internal emails, and Sarah's visitor logs from the church network after her death. In exchange, he got hush money. But one thing Caldwell didn't know? Jonas had made backups. Callie viewed the footage in Jonas's laptop. September 12th, 9:47 p.m., Sarah enters the church basement. 9:56 p.m., Eli Thorne enters through the side. 10:02 p.m., Nathan Caldwell arrives. Alone. 10:16 p.m., footage cuts out. 11:08 p.m., only Eli emerges. No Sarah. No Caldwell. Jonas also recovered deleted text messages from Eli's church-issued phone. One stood out. From Caldwell, "You owe me. Take care of it, or I tell them what you did in 2018. Another. From Eli to Sarah, "We need to talk. Alone. Tonight. No games." The timeline was damning. Sarah had gone to the basement to confront Caldwell, but someone else showed up. Someone who still carried secrets Sarah had uncovered. Callie brought Eli in for questioning. At first, he denied everything. Then she played the audio file Jonas recovered, a voicemail Sarah had accidentally left recording when her phone dialed Eli's number during their meeting. In the background, you could hear her yelling, "You think protecting him will save you? You're just another coward hiding behind a pulpit." Then a struggle, a gasp, a hard thud, then silence. Eli broke. In a tearful confession, he said Sarah confronted him first, before Caldwell even arrived. She accused him of helping cover up abuse cases from years prior. Eli claimed he tried to reason with her. But when she threatened to go public with his role in silencing survivors, something in him snapped. He shoved her. She fell, hit her head on the concrete. He said it was an accident. But instead of calling 911, he called Caldwell. And Caldwell told him exactly what to do. "Make it look like a robbery," he allegedly said. Then Caldwell helped him stage the scene. Her purse dumped, phone smashed, the door left ajar. But the most chilling part? Nathan Caldwell baptized Eli the next morning, in front of the congregation, as if nothing had happened. With Jonas's digital evidence, Eli's confession, and multiple corroborating witnesses, prosecutors finally brought charges. Eli Thorne, second-degree murder, obstruction of justice, tampering with evidence. Nathan Caldwell, in absentia, accessory to murder, conspiracy, spiritual abuse. A federal manhunt for Caldwell began. Interpol joined after reports placed him boarding a private charter jet out of the country 2 days before his disappearance. 1 year later, a new plaque was installed at First Hope, in memory of Sarah Whitlock, 1988 to 2024. She spoke the truth even when her voice trembled. The church underwent restructuring. A new council replaced the leadership. Several survivors filed lawsuits, some settled, others still ongoing. Sarah's story was covered by major networks, a docuseries, and even a Senate committee on religious abuse cover-ups. She had become more than a murder victim. She was a symbol of what silence protects, and what courage costs. Detective Callie Voss stood at the edge of Sarah's grave one final time. She left behind the small silver cross Sarah once wore in high school, recovered from Eli's glove box months after the trial. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Sarah had trusted Callie with her truth, and the town had finally listened. Evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it wears a collar and holds a Bible. If this story shook you like it did us, don't let it end here. Check out our next gripping investigation into how power, control, and manipulation have destroyed more lives than bullets ever could. Click on the next displayed true crime story that's just as chilling. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest chilling updates.